Good morning, everyone. We are coming to you live via Facebook streaming, via YouTube streaming, and also via Skype online. Each one of you is welcome to this live streaming. Going within role of meditation. In the process of going within, role of meditation is very important. Whenever there are thoughts moving in your consciousness, consciousness is like a screen, a sky, the surface of the water. It can be calm, it can have distortions, it can have flickerings, and whenever there is the surface of the water is waving too much, then the image that you want to see is not possible and you are not able to see the image clearly. Whenever there are thoughts moving, your consciousness, it distorts, and there are many thoughts, not many, but millions of thoughts that are constantly rushing. It is like a rush hour. Like the rush hour, they continuously walking. It is like a traffic jam where nothing is moving, everything, there is pollution, because when there is a traffic jam, the vehicles are emitting and all this is causing pollution. Something like this happens when thoughts are continuously floating on the inner sky. And these thoughts have a chain link, they are connected to one another. Do an experiment. Just sit down and take a name, and you will find hooked onto that many thoughts starts emerging as if it is a non-stop continuous flow. I have heard while traveling in the train, there are times when you see the beggars traveling in the train, the other vendors, they ply their trade in the train. So it happened, the ticket collector came to check the ticket. He checked everyone. He found a man was hiding under the seat. The ticket collector asked him to come out and asked him where is the ticket. The poor man with his folded hands told the ticket collector that he does not have the ticket and he is a very poor man, and then the ticket collector asked, where are you going? He said, I am going to my village because I have to get my daughter married. So the ticket collector felt compassion on him and leave him. In his search for the ticket, he found another person hiding under the seat, and he was the young man. So he asked him to come out and inquired about the ticket. The man said, I do not have the ticket. So jokingly, the ticket collector asked him, are you going to get your daughter married also in the village? At this, the young man said, no, I am not going to get my daughter married. I am the would-be son-in-law of the old man. Would-be son-in-law of that old man. This is how thoughts are connected to one another. And this is what is called the rush hour. They are holding hands with one another, linked together and interlinked, and the whole crowd is rushing around you. How can you know what is truth then? You have to get out of this stampede, get out of this crowd. Truth you come to know when you traverse along the projected path all by yourself, unaffected by the rush hour. And when you are not affected by thoughts or things like these, this is what meditation is all about. I have heard another thing. A man used to beg on a particular, from place to, like city, they were the people who beg during the train, as the train moving. So the train is moving from place A to B. That was his area. So the people who were traveling in that, he were familiar with that route. So it happened, the people who were traveling in that, on that route on a regular basis, they missed the old man. So once it happened that they encountered the person. So someone asked, I am not seeing you in this area begging. He said, I got my daughter married, and this area, this route, I gave it to my son-in-law as a wedding gift. So instead of me, he does the begging in this area, on this route. This is how thoughts are interconnected to one another. When you can move without the thoughts, without being affected by thoughts, something happens. Every moment things are happening. A breath comes in, a breath goes out. This is a movement, something is happening. And when all these things are happening, vibrations keeps on coming. Some you like, some you don't like. You are standing next to me, assisting me in my kitchen work. I say something to you. You may not say that you reacted, you may not even know that you have reacted. But you have reacted because something that has been said, you do not know. And we consider these things as if the man is doing things. Existence every moment creates situation for you to introspect and analyze your progress. It is self-checking. To check your inner health, like the spacecraft goes in the orbit. In the space, there are different kinds of controls. One is the connection with the ground station. So ground station sends this signal, and the spacecraft also sends this signal to the ground station, giving indication of its health moment to moment, that all its equipments are working in order. And then there is a space station. It is also in contact with that. So when you are traversing in your life, there are certain signals which comes to the ground station, which is your master. And some signals are there for you to analyze. There is immediately change in your body language, change on your face. You start, your movements becomes galloping. And because you did not like, you do not have a control to say anything. Sometimes you do. Otherwise, there is a reaction. This was the signal sent to you for you to analyze how well is your inner health. And at times when the master, in case of the orbiting spacecraft and the ground station, there is pure communication. So there is no emotional or human element involved in it. And because of that, it receives signals and follows the instructions. But when the ground station, that is the master, sends you the signals, there is your mind, there is your own intelligence, there is your own ego sense, there is your own storehouse of the memory. All these payloads, in the scientific language, all these payloads starts functioning immediately. The ego sense says, this man always thinks himself to be all-knowing. He does not have a respect. This could be done this way also, but he wants to have his own way. The memory also comes in. You are using your intelligence that this can be done that way also. So sometimes you argue. And when your argument is not paid any attention, there is immediate reaction and the communication is broken. This is what happens. And this is why it is very difficult to be around a living master. You can take a book in your hand, you can read, you can do, because there is no one else in that. Even if what you are reading, you can interpret it in your own way. But when you are around a living master, it is very difficult to be not affected by the ego sense, the storehouse of the memory, your own intelligence, and continuing to traverse along the trajectory that has been there for you to travel, to attain to awakening, is meditation. It is consciousness without mind, consciousness without thought, consciousness which is not wavering, Consciousness without ego sense. Consciousness which is not operating with the storehouse of the memory. Then it is there in all its beauty and benediction. Then it is there, surrounding you in all its beauty and benediction. Then truth is there. You can call it God, call it Nirvana, or whatever you may like to call it. It is there. And it is there as an experience. You are in it, and it is in you. You will know what truth is then. You will know what silence is. You will know it is a state of thoughtless awakening, thoughtless awareness. With this as your traverse, you enter into the realm of surrender. Surrender is understanding. The first thing to remember about surrender is you cannot do it. You cannot say that I am surrendering. In a particular moment, how you respond to that situation at the spur of the moment is the realm of surrender. You are doing some cooking or work. Suddenly you touch something hot. Immediately a signal goes from the spot where the finger touches the hot spot, and immediate response comes to it. It takes a fraction of a second. If you can't be aware of it, you can avoid many dangers. Just before anything is to happen, this signal comes to you. And that process of the space orbiter or whatever it is, because your finger is in the movement, like a space orbiter moving in the orbit, and it sends the signal. The ground station, which is your mind, receives the signal. In the language of medicine, it is known as parasympathetic and metasympathetic nervous system. And if you can immediately respond to it without any thought coming to it, or saying that this one said that, using your intelligence at that time, unwavering intelligence, thoughtless intelligence is needed, not intellect. You can avoid this crashing. And that is what surrender is. You cannot do it, it happens. You can stop it. It is not a doing. You can prevent it from happening, however. You cannot manage for it to happen. Your power about surrender is only negative. You can prevent it, but you cannot allow it, you cannot bring it. It is not something that you can do it. If you can do it, it is within your doing, then it is not surrender. Because the doer is there. And surrender happens when doer is not there. Only there is an understanding. I am not. Surrender is an insight. Surrender is an insight that ego does not exist. That I am not separate. It is not an act, but understanding. I repeat it. Surrender is not something that you do. It is happening in a moment. It is an understanding that I am not. It is an insight that ego does not exist. Ego is not operating at this moment. I am not separate from the whole. It is therefore an understanding. In the first place, you have to remember, as you are false. Because you consider yourself separate from the whole. And the separation is whole. Not for a single moment you exist separate from the cosmos. You do not exist separate from the whole. The tree cannot exist if it is uprooted from the earth. The tree cannot exist if sun disappears tomorrow. The tree cannot exist if no water is coming to its roots. So water supply is important. It must be uprooted deep within. It must have the sunlight. The tree cannot exist if it cannot breathe. The tree is rooted in all these 5 elements. What are these 5 elements? The earth, where its roots are. The light, the sun, the water, the air. These are the 5 elements which are very essential for the survival of the tree. And this is what Buddhists call as skandha. The 5 groups. We were talking about what Avalokita was talking about. 5. When Buddha came to the transcendental vision, when he passed through all the stages, when he passed through all the rungs of the ladder and came to the 7th temple, from there he looked down. In the process of climbing, you are going through the staircase. You have not reached the top corridor where you can see everything very clearly. Avalokita, when Buddha came to the transcendental vision, when he passed through all the stages, when he passed through all the rungs of the ladder, when he came to the 7th, and from there he looked down, looked back, and what he saw? He saw 5 heaps with nothing substantial in them, just pure emptiness or shunyata. Shunya means empty. Tree cannot exist if these five elements are not constantly pouring energy into it. The earth pours its energy, the water pours its energy, the sun pours its energy, the wind pours its energy. The tree cannot exist if these five elements are not constantly pouring energy into it. Tree is a combination of these five elements. If tree starts thinking, I am, then there is going to be the misery in the tree. The difference between you and the tree: you are given a mind which you do not know how to use it. Mind is a process, not a thought. Mind is a mechanism. It is intelligence, not intellect. Tree is just a combination of these five elements. If tree starts thinking I am, then there is going to be the misery for the tree. The tree will create a hell for itself, but tree is not so foolish as man is. Tree is not so foolish. They do not carry any mind. They are there. If tomorrow they appears, they simply disappear. They don't cling. There is no one to cling. The tree is constantly surrendered to the existence. It is constantly surrendered to the water for energy, the earth for the energy, the sun for the energy, the wind for the energy. Constantly surrendered. If they disappear, they disappear. The tree is constantly surrendered to all that is existential, all that is happening. By surrender, it means it never considers itself separate. It has not come to that stupid idea of ego that man has and nourishes. And so are the birds, so are the mountains, so are the stars. It is only man who has turned his great opportunity of being conscious into being self-conscious. Self-conscious means ego has come in. Man has consciousness. If it grows, it will bring greatest bliss possible. But if something goes wrong, the communication is broken, consciousness turns sour because the connection with the ground station is broken, and it becomes self-consciousness. Ego has come in. Then it creates a hell. Then it creates misery. Both alternatives are always available. It is for you to choose. It is for you to choose. The first thing to be understood, that ego is the false entity. It does not exist. It does not exist. Nobody exists in separation. You are as much one with the universe as I am, as Buddha is, as Jesus is. I know it, but you do not know it. The difference is only of recognition. I have recognized that there is no difference between Buddha and me. He is nourished by all that I am being nourished. The difference is only of recognition. The difference is not existential, not at all. So you have to look into this stupid idea of separation that ego brings into you. Now, if you start trying to surrender, if you are trying to bring the surrender, that you are still nourishing the idea of being separate. Now you are thinking, I will surrender. Now I am going to surrender. But you think you are. Looking into the very idea of separation, one day you will find that you are not separate. So how can you surrender? When the spaceship is sent into the space, it has different components. The first is the ground station, which is the earth center. Then it creates a center that goes on orbiting in the space around that planet or whatsoever it is. That is the intermediate or the connection in the space. So the ground station establishes its connection with the space station. Then the actual that has to continue to do the work. Looking at this analogy, there is existence, which you can call God, then the Master, who is grounded in his innerness, and through that in the cosmos, the entire existence. And you have come to him, but your ego, your memory sense is not allowing. Sometimes there is a connection, but that connection is very feeble. The signals are very feeble, but the moment there is, you recognize that you are not separate from the whole. You do not have to consider that you are separate. You can find it is easier to establish an inseparable connection with the ground station. Then it will happen naturally with the existence as well. This is the first thing, that you do not have to think that I am going to surrender. Surrender is a byproduct that happens. You have to think, you have to consider yourself not separate from the whole. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. The moment the drop considers itself to be separate from the ocean, it is turbulent, it is restless. The moment it considers itself to be the part of the ocean, that it is oceanic, it merges into the ocean, it dissolves in the vastness of the ocean, it is no more a drop. Ego vanishes the very moment. You attain to the state of totality, the oceanic. The consciousness becomes oceanic. The moment it becomes oceanic, then you are not separate from the ocean. There is no question of surrender. The moment you consider that you are not separate from ocean, you are oceanic, and that state of understanding is surrender. Looking into the very idea of separation, one day you find that you are not separate. So how can you surrender? There is no one to surrender. There has never been anyone to surrender. The surrenderer, the one who surrenders, the subject is not there. Not at all. Never found anywhere. If you go on looking, go into yourself, you will not find the one who has to surrender anywhere. In that very moment, surrender happens. When the subject is not found, in that moment, surrender happens. But you cannot do it. If you do it, it is false. Out of curiosity, only that which is false happens, and one falsity leads to another, and this process continues. So whatsoever you do will be false and more false, and one state of falsity will give rise to another, and so on and so forth. And the fundamental falsity is ego sense. The fundamental falsity is ego sense. I am separate. You ask, and then your surrender becomes a goal-oriented. Remember, ego is always goal-oriented. Only this much for this morning. You have to bring the person to a stage where curiosity arises to know more. And then you suddenly leave for it to grow in you. It happened. When Swami Vivekananda was speaking in the Parliament of Religions, Sister Nivedita, the Margaret Noble, asked a question. What was so unique that Krishna is playing the flute on the bank of the blue river under the sky with full moonlight, and the milkmaid, hearing that clarion call, will rush to the bank of the blue river and dance out of ecstasy around Krishna. Dance around Krishna means dance around the totality. What was so unique about it? You want the answer to this question as you have asked. What was so unique? You cannot understand it in words. It has to be your experience. It happened. Vivekananda did not answer that question. He continued the talk. The talk became so intense and interesting. All of a sudden, Vivekananda left the stage and he ran. What would have happened then? Maybe someone thought that He had a problem or he has to go to the restroom. But he went in the open, under the open sky, and he ran. Couple hundred feet he ran, then he suddenly stopped. As he started running, the crowd that was there in the audience started running behind him. When Vivekananda had run couple hundred feet, he stopped. The crowd also stopped. He asked, "Why are you following me?" He said, "I don't know. There was something inexplainable when you were speaking to us. And there was nothing so unique, but there was something unimaginable, something beyond our description, beyond that we do not find the word to explain what was happening to us. It just was a call from within to follow this man." He said exactly this was happening between milkmaids and Krishna. It was the practical experience that Vivekananda gave. It can take you to the point where it is, the iron is ready to be struck. The master takes you to the point where one more blow, the iron will get flat. And that's where he suddenly stops. Only this much for this morning. Until we meet again, take care and do have a pleasant day.